Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, this is the first lecture of a series of lectures about the science of Tajweed. This will be an introduction entailing what is Tajweed, why do we learn Tajweed, and other information about the science of Tajweed. So Tajweed is the science of pronouncing every letter correctly and according to its ruling. What does Tajweed mean? Linguistically, it means tahseen, which is to beautify or to better something. Technically, it means إعطاء كل حرف حقه ومستحقه, which means giving every letter its right in how it's supposed to be pronounced, how long it should be, or any other characteristic of that letter. So why do we learn Tajweed? We know that it's an obligation from Allah, and the proof of that from the Quran is from Surah Al-Muzammil, ayah number 4. يقول الله سبحانه وتعالى أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا, which means, and recite the Quran aloud in a slow and melodious style, tartila. And Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh said in the explanation of this ayah that a tartil is tajweed of the letters and knowing where to stop correctly. So what are some common mistakes of tajweed? Sometimes there are very clear mistakes, such as not pronouncing the letter right, which can lead to a change in the meaning. However, other times there could be hidden mistakes. For example, prolonging a med for more than it's supposed to be, or using it inappropriately, or using a ruling not in the right place or the right time. So how did the Prophet ﷺ recite the Quran? He recited it in slow, measured, and rhythmic tones as Allah instructed him. He also did not hasten when reciting, and he commanded people to recite the Quran in a pleasant, melodious voice that shows fear from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, we should all strive to follow the Prophet's way in reciting the Quran. So why do we have rules for Tajweed, or how did that come to be? The reason for the science of Tajweed was to guard the glorious Quran and preserve it from distortion. And this happened after the spread of Islam, where Islam came to other people other than Arabs who were not good at Arabic or didn't know Arabic at all. So Muslims feared that the Arab tongue would become corrupted, which would result in some misinterpretations of the Quran. So it then became mandatory for rules to be put down that would preserve the recitation of the Quran from mistakes, and guarantee the reader of the Quran an integrity of the pronunciation. So what are some appropriate manners when reading the Quran? So first, there are manners of the heart, like understanding the origin of the words. Knowing that the greatness of the words being read and the bounty of Allah to His creation, that this is the addressing of Allah to His creation. And the reader should always think about the characteristics of Allah the Exalted when he's reading the Quran to understand the full meaning. Another is the presence of the heart. So the reader should throw away other thoughts while reading the Quran, only concentrating on the Quran while he or she is reading it. Also, the reader should always ponder and understand the meaning of the verses that he's reading. So there's less reward in reciting the Quran without understanding the meaning, because the Quran was revealed for guidance, and this can be achieved through recitation accompanied by pondering. And this means to interact and react to every verse according to what is proper for it. Lastly, everyone should individualize what's being said by Allah in the Quran to their own selves. So the reader feels that every message in the Quran is meant especially for them personally, and acting upon that. So aside of the manners of the heart when reading the Quran, there are some external manners or external matters that should be kept in mind. First of all, the reader should always be pure. Their body, their clothes, and the place they're in should be pure. They should also perform wudu before actually holding the Quran and reading from it. Also, the reader should always seek refuge from a shaitan by saying A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, which the proof of that comes from the Quran. You should also avoid cutting off reading to talk with other people. At least finish the verse that you're saying and then tell the person who's talking to you whether to wait for you or telling them that you'll be with them in a second. Also, you should always be humble when you're reading the Quran and open your heart and mind to the full understanding of the Quran so you can understand the full picture of what's being said. So these are some tips on learning Tajweed. The best way is always to learn from a teacher that knows these rules and shows you the proper method of reciting. For example, you would read to your teacher and he would correct you or confirm what's right that you're saying and teach you the various rules of Tajweed. You should also listen constantly to Quran recitations from different reciters. This will help you memorize and have a feel for what the right way the Quran should sound. You should also apply these rules that you have learned in surahs that you already have memorized, so you would re-memorize these surahs with the correct way of reciting them, the correct Tajweed rules. Lastly, you should also constantly practice until you become proficient. And don't forget, once you become proficient, you don't stop there. You can better yourself in how you understand the Quran and the meaning of it, and how you can implement it. So there are many benefits of learning Tajweed that we found in a hadith. The first is, the reciters of the Quran will be in the company of the noble and obedient angels. And we find this from hadith Aisha عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال: مثل الذي يقرأ القرآن وهو حافظ له مع السفرة الكرام ومثل الذي يقرأ ويتتعتع فيه وهو عليه شاق له أجران. Which means, verily the one who recites the Quran beautifully, smoothly and precisely, he will be in the company of the noble and obedient angels. And as for the one who recites with difficulty, stammering or stumbling through its verses, then he will have twice that reward. Another benefit is that you will be from the best of people. We find this from hadith عن عثمان رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال: خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. Which means that the best of you are the ones who learn the Quran and teach it to others. This is a good reminder to all of us that once we learn the Quran, we shouldn't just stop there. We should all strive to teach everyone who is around us how to read the Quran correctly as well. Another great benefit from reading the Quran is there are 10 rewards for each letter you recite from the Quran. And the proof of this comes from Hadith Abdullah ibn Mas'ud رضي الله عنه أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من قرأ حرفا من كتاب الله فله به حسنة والحسنة بعشر أمثالها لا أقول ألف لام ميم حرف ولكن ألف حرف ولام حرف وميم حرف. Whoever reads a letter from the book of Allah, he will have a reward, and that reward will be multiplied by 10. I am not saying that Alif Lam Mim is one letter, rather I am saying that Alif is a letter, Lam is a letter, and Mim is a letter. And another benefit would be that the Quran will lead you to paradise. We know this from Hadith Abi Umam al-Bahili رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول اقرأوا القرآن فإنه يأتي يوم القيامة شفيعا لأصحابه, which means read the Quran, for verily it will come on the day of standing as an intercessor for its companions. And aside from these many benefits of learning Tajweed and how to read the Quran properly, there are many more benefits that you can find out yourself and look up. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.